Okay, I just wanted to go over a few examples when identifying functions. So a function is a relation from a set of inputs to a set of outputs where each input is related to exactly one output. Now I know that's a lot of words, so don't freak out. We're going to go over a few examples and hopefully this will make a little more sense. So in this first example, we have our inputs, which is x, and our outputs, which is y. Now, for a relation to be a function, every input must create exactly one output. It cannot, so basically for every x, there must be exactly one y. You can't have more than one output for every input. So if we look here, when x is 1, y is 2. When x is 2, y is 4. When x is 3, y is 6. And when x is 4, y is 8. So for every x, there is exactly one y. So this is a function. In our second example, when x is 3, y is 2. When x is 3, y is 4. When x is 4, y is 3. And when x is 4, y is 5. So notice here, when x is 3, we get two outputs. We get an output of 2 and an output of 4. And when x is 4, we get two outputs once again. So remember, we can only have one output for every input. And here we have two outputs. And here again, we have two outputs for each of our inputs. So that means that this is not a function. Okay, we might also see examples in our assignments that look kind of like this, and it's basically exactly what we just looked at, it's just drawn a little bit differently. So notice in this first example, we kind of have what I did up here with our arrows. And notice for every input, there is exactly one output, okay? So that means that this is a function. Okay, in our next example, notice here that 2, our input 2, has two outputs. It has an output of 4 and an output of 8. Remember, for each input, we need exactly one output. So here we have two outputs. So this means that this is not a function. Okay, and in this last example, it looks a little bit different. So notice here, our inputs 1 and 3 both create an output of 2. Now this is okay. It's okay to have the same, it's for multiple inputs to have the same output. We just want to make sure that for every input there's exactly one output, and that is the case here. 1 only creates 2, 3 only creates 2, 5 only creates 6, and 7 only creates 9. So for every input there's exactly one output here. So that means that this is a function. Okay, we might also see examples where we have ordered pairs. So to make it a little bit easier, one thing we can do is just draw a table like what we had before. And I can put each of my ordered pairs in here. So we have 2, 3, so x is 2, y is 3. We have 3, 4, we have 4, 5, and we have 5, 6. Now you don't have to make a table, but if that kind of helps you visually organize your information, then it may work for you. And notice here that for each input, there is exactly one output. So this is a function. Okay, in our next example, we can draw another table. Okay, so notice here, for our input 2, when x is 2, we get two outputs. We get that y is 1 and y is -1. So we have two outputs here. And notice also, when x is 4, we get two outputs. So remember, for every input, there has to be exactly one output. So this is not a function. Okay, and lastly, we might see our relations shown as a graph. And I'm going to go over a quick trick to identify whether or not we are looking at a function. So again, for every input, there must be exactly one output. That means for every x, there must be exactly one y. So if we go along our x-axis here, and let's say we are looking, let's say this is 1. So x is 1. If we kind of draw a line up and down, we notice that for 1, there is exactly one y value. And when x is 2, notice that there is exactly one y value. So what we can do to recognize whether it's a function, we can do what's called the vertical line test. So if you can draw a vertical line anywhere on your graph and it only crosses one point, then you know that it is a function. So again, this is the vertical line test. I'm going to make a little note over here. And so if you draw a vertical line and it crosses one point, that means it is a function. And if it crosses more than one point, that means it's not a function. Okay, so let's look at these other examples. Here, if I draw a vertical line, this is crossing 2 points on this graph. So that means for this x value, there's two y values. So that means that this is not a function. And if we look at this last graph down here, I can draw a vertical line anywhere on my graph, and it's only crossing at one point. So that means that this is a function.